This is Ray Anderson. Welcome to another episode of Good Hearted Leadership. And today I have the pleasure of being able to share the platform with Angela Gomez, who's the National Director of Development for Free Wheelchair Missions. The exciting reason I'm here is that this spring in May, we spent a week delivering wheelchairs in North Vietnam. Angela, it's good to see you.
Pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be able to share this again and talk about this trip we took. Tell us a little bit about how you got this whole thing together so that we could make this trip here in May.
Absolutely. Well, we're a free wheelchair mission. We provide uniquely designed wheelchairs to the disabled poor in developing nations. Vietnam is one of our countries where we have a really strong distribution partner. And when I'm talking to supporters who are like you, very passionate and want to go and visit some of the areas where we serve, we a year in advance start planning where we can take teams to. And so this particular trip was planned back in July. So we build a team together of people that can actually go to Vietnam on that particular time of the year. And I'm selected as the team leader. I've never been to Vietnam, so for me it was such a joy and excitement to be able to be there for the first time. So it was really, really great to see the team come together and get a chance to meet you, who you've been on trips and I've been on trips, never together, never to Vietnam to serve. So it was really, really a big joy for me.
No, it was neat for me, and of course, you know, I'd been there before as a Vietnam veteran in 1969, and to be able to go back again and see it, and instead of delivering hell, I could deliver healing and deliver wheelchairs was just really, really incredible. Mm-hmm. You know, what I'd like you to do, if you can, Angela, explain a little bit about Free Wheelchair Mission and how Don Schoendorfer happened to get this all put together, because I think it's just an amazing story, and you've been there almost from the onset.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Free Wheelchair Mission is a faith-based humanitarian organization, and we're roughly about 19 years old. Our founder, Don Schoendorfer, is actually a mechanically trained engineer. He's got over 50 patents under his belt, a brilliant engineer. He was working in the business sector many, many years ago and was on a mission trip with his wife in Morocco many years and saw a lady crawling across the ground in the dirt floor, and that really impacted him. And he really wasn't aware of the needs in other countries in the developing world. As he started looking into it, he discovered that there's this need, that people in other countries don't have the ability to get access to a wheelchair. And if they do, they can't afford it because they're the poorest of the poor. And depending on what part of the world you were talking about, you know, it's still, even till this day, you know, disability is because of lack of education. People don't know why someone potentially could be born with a disability, or because of lack of resources and healthcare programs. You know, someone here in the States that maybe gets into a car accident or something can get the proper care and may not need to use a wheelchair, but in other countries where there's no resources, people end up needing wheelchairs. So back in 2001, Don, in his garage, decided he wanted to do something about it. And when he thought about it, he says, the solution is simple. People just need a wheelchair, need a chair with wheels to get around. And so he literally took his bicycle apart. He got one of those plastic chairs that we all kind of have in our backyards. And he started tinkering with it and created the first prototype. So in 2001, we started with his very first couple of wheelchairs, and this was through a partnership with his local church, Mariners Church in Irvine. The church was going to India, and he had all these wheelchairs that he had put together in his garage, and this was a medical missions trip. All the people going were actual medical doctors, and Don's got a PhD, but they said, okay, you can go on this trip, and you can bring some of your wheelchairs. He had 100, but when it was all said and done, he could only take 4. And he really didn't know what he was going to do, how he was going to get the wheelchairs, but everything unfolded nicely, because when he was there in India, he was actually waiting around for the people to get their medical help, and as he was waiting around there, he saw a family come carrying what was their son and child, who was really in severe need. He had a severe disability. So without any translation, he just rolled the wheelchair that he had designed to them, and they just knew that this was for them, and he was able to give it to them. And immediately you see the transformation, the smiles, the relief from the parents. So I'm fast forwarding here, but that was the birth of Free Wheelchair Mission. He came back. He had a job. When he came back from his mission trip, he discovered that his company went bankrupt, and he was out of a job. So and Don was started the mission because of his faith, and he felt, okay, God was telling him he's got to do this. This is what his new mission in life is, and so got a 501c3 going, and now we've distributed over 1,200,000 wheelchairs in 93 countries. And we do this because we partner with like-minded organizations around the world who help us identify and find the people that need the wheelchairs.
Right, right.
And so in Vietnam, that's how we are able to do that.
And tell us a little bit more about Vietnam, because this isn't the first load they've gotten. How many wheelchairs have gone to Vietnam itself, and who's your partner there? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. The organization that we partner with is called Giving It Back to Kids. It's also a faith-based organization that is only focused in providing services in all of Vietnam. They're based out of Da Nang, and with them we've been able to distribute 178,000 wheelchairs all over Vietnam, and we've been partnering with them since 2004. It's a really great organization. Their primary focus is to provide aid for children, hence the name Giving It Back to Kids, to unwed mothers, providing medical care. It originally started with providing not an orphanage but a home for children that were abandoned, and it's evolved over the years to provide much more services for the people of Vietnam. And wheelchairs is one big component of what they do. They're able to not only provide other kind of medical care for some of the people in need, but also now give wheelchairs working with the local municipalities as well and the local officials.
I'd like you to explain a little bit more about that, but we're talking about 178,000 wheelchairs, and you've been involved with probably 150,000 of those, or in that neighborhood, since you started. What took you so long to go?
Personally, to visit Vietnam, well, the thing is that although we work in 93 countries and we ship all over the world, not all of our distribution partners are able to host groups like how you and I went. Certain partners are able to, either because of resources that they have or also safety reasons.
Right.
And so throughout the years, many of our supporters have asked, to go to different countries. We provide roughly anywhere from 6 to 8 trips a year. And so on a yearly basis, I'm actually originally from Ecuador. I speak Spanish. So most of my trips have been to Latin America because I can be a translator as well as the team leader. So it's just been one of those things, a matter of timing. But it was time to go to Vietnam. It's one of our great partners. We refer to them a lot. And so I was just thrilled that I got to go, and especially being able to have 2 Vietnam vets plus a Vietnamese refugee on our team, as well as the other folks that were there. It was really a joy to be part of it.
No, it was great, and I think before we move into the actual trip itself, tell us a little bit about that connection between Give It Back to the Kids and the country of Vietnam, because they have a system that's really well defined. Explain to us a little bit about how the wheelchairs are distributed.
Sure. So first of all, our wheelchairs are $80. That's a donation. That covers manufacturing and shipping of our wheelchairs. And so that's what the folks here in the U.S. that support us, when they give that money, that's how we're able to get the wheelchairs. And we do it in the sort of the Costco model. We order them from China in bulk. They go in a container, 40-foot cargo container, shipped directly to the country. And there's usually about 550 unassembled wheelchairs in a container. So when it goes to the country where we're sending it to our partners, once it arrives there, it becomes the responsibility of the distribution partner to clear the container through customs, get it imported, get it trucked into where their warehouse is, and then ultimately stored and distributed to those that need it. So with Giving It Back to Kids, they've done a fantastic job of partnering with the local government officials into helping them set up a system, because obviously they're helping the people of Vietnam. And so they've been able to create a great partnership with them so that they can clear multiple containers through customs. That's not always the case, and that's why even though we've served in 93 countries, some countries it could be that we've only shipped 2 or 3, and others that we've shipped multiple. We have some of our top 5 countries, and Vietnam is one of them. And it's because Giving It Back to Kids has done a great job of partnering with the local government officials to help them clear the containers through customs, but also to get to meet the people that we serve, that they serve, they only have a certain amount of bandwidth and staff as well. So they have to partner with the local officials to get permission to be able to help underwrite the costs of getting those, in essence, what we call wheelchair ceremonies, organized and planned, and have a whole system. I mean, it really is a strong network that our partner has done there in Vietnam, and we actually use them as a model that when we're talking to other partners of how it can be done. But we know every country is unique, every distribution partner is unique. So with this case, you know, they've done a fantastic job of being able to leverage the work that they're doing to be able to garnish the respect of the local officials. And then it's interesting because, as you and I witnessed, the local officials want to be a part of it. They're also in awe of what is being done for those in need. And so as long as, you know, we're following and adhering to asking for permission ahead of time, being able to involve obviously make the proper coordination, they've been able to really do a great job of getting them all over the country.
And I think one of the neat things about it, and we'll talk a little bit more when we come back from the break, but the idea that you can go to a communist country on a faith-based organization and be able to deliver wheelchairs has been kind of a phenomenal partnership. And we'll talk about that more. We're going to take a short break here, and we'll be resuming here in a minute. Well, welcome back. And so this is our next segment of this journey with Angela Gomez, National Director of Development over at Free Wheelchair Mission. From now on, we're going to be talking about our specific trip, which was from May 21st to the 24th. And we were in North Vietnam, in Thanh Hoa Province, which is a little bit east of Hanoi. So as we move forward, you're going to be able to see some of what we had seen and what we did. It was just a phenomenal trip, and Angela did a marvelous job of leading us. So one of the things that I think was powerful for both myself and Peter is that we'd been there before in 1969 and 70, and then we were there as a part of a team that was part of the war. I was with the 82nd Airborne. He was with a special ops group that was looking for intelligence at the time. What you see here is a picture of Peter and I, between us are veterans of the North Vietnamese Army. And I think one of the most touching things for us was that we were able to come back and get this healing with them, in which we were greeted every place we went, right, Angela? I mean, the people were really outgoing and wanted to reach out to us as opposed to being sensing them as an enemy. It was amazing to me to be able to be there and feel that after 50 years we finally got this healing. So, you know, the interesting thing is, Angela, we had the team. What I wanted you to talk a little bit about, in Jamaica we had formal meetings, and we have them here. You know, we were given this plaque, which was really unusual. Is that consistent with your own experience? Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I think we tell people all the time that, you know, in a lot of countries, it's an honor to have Americans come and visit and be with them, especially in some of the poorest areas where we're going and serving. Many tourists don't go to these areas.
Right.
So for them, it's an honor to have us there. And so there's a lot of formality with speeches and thank you speeches, and it just happens every time, and especially in Vietnam. We've been told that by our partners, so it's to be expected.
Right. No, and it was amazing. And also, you know, this is an example of kind of one lunch, and we'll have another. So this is common along all the partnerships. Is that true from your experience?
Yeah, you know, number one, we always wanted safety for the teams because you never want anyone being sick. That's no fun. So our partners will find the best place possible to take a group that, you know, they can be confident you're using filtered water and all that. So in Vietnam, you know, there's every country's different. So Vietnam, there was, you know, as you can notice, there was like a buffet of food and it never ended. wanted. And it was more and more and more. But it was really sweet because that's their love language.
Here's one of the things I want to share very briefly. And, because both Peter and I are veterans, we had this opportunity to really get a chance to share an experience with these soldiers that we were fighting, in 1969. And so there are several occasions in which both Peter and I had an opportunity to be able to share that experience, and we've taken some pictures. From you as an outsider, what was your observations of Peter and I as we kind of met with these people?
Well, I can speak personally, it was educational because, as a kid, I learned a lot about, or in my history classes, learned about the Vietnam conflict, but to actually be there with Vietnam veterans and to see how the language was a barrier, but that was it.
Yeah.
The smiles, the hugs, the exchange of food, it was all just really beautiful to witness,
Right,
and so it was just really fascinating.
Right. And I have this picture. This is the first wheelchair, and this was when we were in Rong Thong Town, of all things, in Dong Song District. And were you surprised that a lot of the people that we delivered wheelchairs to were older?
No, because our distribution partners have shared that with us. In the Vietnamese culture, there's a lot of reverence for the older generation. And so we knew that a lot of the wheelchairs do always priority goes to the older generation. So no, I wasn't surprised. And because they're also in ceremony formats where we gave the wheelchairs away, we knew that was they know ahead of time.
Right.
So, but throughout the week, we also gave it to younger children as well.
Right. And I think the fascinating thing, if I can explain this briefly, as they told it to us, is that basically a province is similar to our state, a district is similar to our counties, and then of course you got the communities. So what we've learned is that the government officials who are coordinating literally go to the villages, and the village votes on who gets the wheelchair. So that's why, as Angela just said, you'll find that sometimes it goes to older people. As we move forward, we're going to show you some examples that went to younger people. But to me, it was like a machine, but done in such a gracious way. It was really, really kind of neat. Here I've got a picture, and you see that we're using Generation 3. Right. How long have you been had the Generation 3?
Not too long ago. So we're 19 years old, and Generation 3 came out, I want to say, in 2013. I have to refresh my memory on some of these facts. However, our founder, Don, knew that some of the feedback that we'd gotten from the field was that they wanted a collapsible wheelchair.
Right.
Really still very sturdy, mountain bike tires,
Yes.
but collapsible so that way it can fit through narrow doors as well as maybe even on buses and so forth. Yeah.
Right.
We always talk about how the wheelchair provides the mobility to the recipient, but it also provides freedom, hope, dignity, and it also all of that for the family members as well.
Right.
So you can witness that. I think for me, when you're observing the caretakers, in this particular case, the overwhelming, they're very overwhelmed. And in the Vietnamese culture, what I did notice was they want to smile, but it's almost like they have to hold that back. But you could tell they were extremely gracious and helpful, grateful.
So we're going to take another short break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about visiting our first mountain village when we were up in Bay Thok District, which is very near the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This community had been bombed very, very severely in the late 60s and early 70s. So welcome back. We're now on to the next segment, and on the second day, which was May 21st, we ended up in the mountains, which were roughly 3 hours west of Than Hoa City. and it had rained tremendously the night before. Did you? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I was a little nervous, to be honest. As a team leader, you know, you hear all this rain, and I already knew where I'd never been there, but I knew it was going to be a long ride over there. So I get nervous, and but in talking to our distribution partners that morning, our hosts, and saying, is it going to be safe? Should we cancel, you know, the day's activities, because it rained all morning and a lot of lightning. But they said, no, it's safe. We can go. And I thought, okay, well, they're the experts and they know the country better than I do. So if they're saying it's okay, then, and they've hosted so many teams in the past. So I had to trust that they knew what they were saying and we were safe.
Right, right. And the interesting thing, it was the picture you see is the clouds over the mountains, which were really, it was really gorgeous. Yeah. I have a short picture here of the entire team of our translators. They were just a great group of people, weren't they?
Absolutely. They kept saying, you know, we're the heart of
Right.
of the organization, of the people. We kept doing the little.
Yeah, this is a symbol, that, right? So, and I wanted to share this story, and as Angela's responsibility was to kind of share among all of us, and this gentleman in particular really affected me because, first of all, he was a veteran. He'd had a bad experience in his own life simply by virtue of losing his paperwork. He was not given a retirement as many of the other veterans that we were able to see had been. What was fascinating to me, and this is the feelings when you realize that this is a country that is dedicated religiously to ancestry worship. And after having returned as a driver for one of the trucks on the Ho Chi Minh Trail where he was wounded, he and several of his friends went back to that village where they were way down on the Ho Chi Minh Trail and actually brought the bodies back so that they could keep the families together. It was just an amazing experience for us, and we were really touched by this particular guy. And as you said, Angela, you were busy kind of talking to everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My role is to make sure it almost like orchestrate the
Yes.
distributions, that every single participant gets an opportunity to, you know, meet the recipients, interview them, get to hear their story. And making sure that there's enough translators to go around.
Right.
So there's a lot of activity throughout each particular distribution.
Right. And so what you're seeing here is an example. I think you're sitting on the left here, but basically there are 3 teams all talking to a recipient and trying to learn the story. And I was the one working with this gentleman who had been wounded back in the 50s.
Yeah, because part of what makes these trips powerful is getting to know the recipient's story and their caretakers.
Right.
You know, what happened, why, what have they not been able to do, you know, what can they do now potentially.
Yeah. Right,
so
right.
It's really neat to hear, you know, the hope
Yes.
through what they share with us.
Yes, and I think that's, the wheelchair, people don't really understand the power of the wheelchair until you get somebody who hasn't had any mobility and now it's transformed their life. It's
Right.
just really, really amazing. I'm going to show another short video here. Because of the rain, we were unfortunately not able to deliver all the wheelchairs. Many people came in on scooters to pick them up because basically there was too much. So the video you're going to see here is basically what I call the Vietnamese SUV. Again, because of the rain the night before that we had to deal with, very few of the people who were getting wheelchairs were able to attend, and so we were able to take a group picture which had everybody who'd gotten a wheelchair that was there, and then all the team behind them. So it was really kind of a neat opportunity.
I love every time we took the group picture, it was fun because everyone wanted to be in it, and everyone was fascinated by your height, yours and Peter's and everyone else's. Your son.
Right.
You know, the Vietnamese people aren't very tall, so they loved being able to take pictures next to you.
Yeah, no, we had that experience over and over again. It was really amazing. And no matter where we were, you know, they were all picked up by people in scooters, so that was amazing. But then we had the ceremonial lunch again. And this one was very memorable.
It was
right?
always very exciting to see where they were going to take us and what food was going to be served.
Right.
A lot of fish, a lot of rice and noodles, and there's some vegetables that get served. And I actually, because I was the team leader, I don't know if you remember that I had to sit with the local officials, the local government officials, and so. You know, there's an expectation that you've got to try everything and eat everything.
Right.
Or some of our other teammates, they chose or left some stuff out, but I had to eat it all. And honestly, I just said, okay, please just, hope I don't get sick, and thankfully I did not. And the food was so good.
Oh, it was
I
wonderful.
was
It was
very
wonderful.
grateful.
And I think, in this particular picture you're seeing here, the gentleman sitting across from us, remember the time when he wanted us all to drink beer?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Lord. We had to slow him down because basically I think everybody was afraid they were, and you were probably not drinking it, but,
Well,
but
no.
some of us were,
Yeah. It was fun. It was a lot of
It was
fun.
absolutely, and it was one of the things that really brought home to us how much this meant to everybody and how grateful they were. And one day, as an example, I asked Angela if I could sit with the leadership team simply because I was interested in knowing that doctor a little bit better. And so I sat there, and Mrs. Long sat
Yeah.
next to me. And one of the meals they had small fish that were
Oh my
probably this
gosh.
long. And I was asking what they were about, and what they were explaining, at the bottom of the rice paddies, they have these little things called mudfish. And so she took one and she took off the head and she put it in my bowl, and I immediately ate it. And she said, "No, no, no." So I had already eaten it, but she was taking it off to kind of spare me the problem of eating it. So this is how you learn about the culture, right?
The joys of traveling.
Right, right. So now we're on, let's take another short break, and we're going to go on to Wednesday, in which we had a very different day than the one we had with the clouds. Well, welcome back to this segment. Angela and I are now going to talk about our trip on Wednesday, the 22nd. We're now more than halfway through the trip, and we're in what's called Howluck province, or district, which is very near San Juan City. So it wasn't a long drive, and mostly there we ended up spending a lot of time with older people, but we were close to them, and we were able to spend some time. Do you remember this particular visit and being with the people there?
Yeah, again, my role is unique in that I'm on the outskirts trying to make sure that we have enough wheelchairs prepared for the next
Right.
site, making sure that we have enough water. What I remember is it's so hot, it's so humid, and everyone's sweating. And a few of our team members had some medical, sensibilities.
Yes, yeah,
So
yeah.
I had to make sure that we are keeping people cool
Right,
or
right.
making sure they had enough water. So for me, every site is a unique experience in that I'm just making sure that there's shade.
Yeah.
They had the wheelchairs for us to assemble right in the
sun.
in open space, which is
Right.
usually not a problem, but
Right.
in that kind of humidity, I said, okay, we got to figure something out because we're all going to faint.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was absolutely true. In this particular context, there were, again, it was predominantly older people. But as I said, this was done on purpose, and each of the villages had an opportunity to pick who they wanted to get done.
Right.
So the point is that for us, I learned a tremendous amount.
Absolutely.
And again, just to see the gratitude on the people's faces for having a wheelchair was just absolutely astounding.
What I love is that, we talked about speeches. I wanted to give everyone an opportunity on our team to give a speech, and so I was blown away at how great public speakers everyone was. Just the gratitude that was conveyed to the people we were visiting
Right.
and serving was really thought out.
Right.
I was just, and you think you'd been practicing the speech for months, but you did a great job. The whole team did.
No, it's just amazing, because you would literally let us know probably 10 minutes before, do you mind speaking here? And so, yeah, thank you. And I too thought that everybody did a great job. This picture here is really remarkable to me. And like I said, I think one of the most fascinating things was being able to talk to the veterans. And in this particular image, there's a picture of a woman. And I think one of the things that I found from Vietnamese veterans when I was earlier is that they were surprised at how many times they found, soldiers when they went out to do body counts that were women. And in this particular context, what you have is a picture of a woman who has her photo from being a veteran back in 1970, and she's been carrying it ever since. And here we are being able to share that experience together. It was It was remarkable. This story to me is one of the most powerful ones in our trip. I'm going to start a little bit because it really touched my heart, and then I'd like you to add to it. But basically, we went to this village, and this was in Ha Thung district, and we ended up on a long, narrow pathway and ended up on a little house. And the owner of the house was a 73-year-old woman who had a 12-year-old boy who had cerebral palsy. We were told that what had happened is that when she was in her early 60s, she and her husband decided they wanted to adopt a child because they had lost a daughter. They got the baby when it was 4 months old, but didn't realize it was disabled until it was a year and a half. She subsequently lost her husband, and what she had to do to survive is she had a small peanut farm. It had some corn on it, and basically she was living on $23 a month. And every day she would take her son and walk him to school in a wagon and then come back and bring him home every night. It was just an amazing thing, wasn't it?
Oh, talk about resilience and the human spirit. When we got there, even though what you just described, it was extreme poverty, dirt everywhere. The love that this lady had for her child was beautiful to witness. And also, you know, here we had probably 20 people
At least.
coming to her little farm or her home, and she had prepared corn for every single one of us,
Right.
peanuts for every single one of
Right.
us, and we, you know, definitely ate, and as well as the local people that were nearby.
Yeah.
But what was really powerful is that, you know, she doesn't have anything, but she gave us everything she had. Who
Right.
knows how much money that everything we ate, how much income that was probably
Yeah.
taking away from her.
It was in a faith term, it was the widow's mite. I was just blown away that she had taken the time to serve all of us. And you can see here from the picture, on the background is some of the corn. She had a small plot of peanuts. I mean, it wasn't a big plot, and to see how she was able to do this was remarkable. We also had tons of kids. You remember all the kids that were there?
Oh my gosh, oh yeah, there's not her kids, but just the
Yeah.
local neighbors.
Yeah.
You know, again, we're a sight to be seen, you know, who is coming to this little village and visiting this particular family. And so all the neighbors come out of the woodworks and they want to see what's happening. And kids, curiosity, you know, they want to see who are these people with these green shirts and
Right.
they look different than us. And so it was nice because we also brought, what I love about our trips as well is that we, you know, our teams usually bring soccer balls and toys for children.
Right.
And because you're inevitably going to meet kids
Right.
throughout the week. And so we were able to shower them with a few little gifts.
Yeah,
Not
and-
much, but, you know, little.
Was enough, and they were all,
and
in fact, this picture here, you can see, they're all looking to see
mesmerized by the little cars that they got and so forth.
Right. It was absolutely amazing. This picture is telling, because I think one of the things that I learned when I was there, which was really fascinating, those of us who have any history of Vietnam, we were just blown away when we learned the culture and how it's over 2,000 years old. And in this particular picture, we have this army captain. And this captain actually served not during the Vietnam War that I was a part of, but rather in the war that happened after that. People aren't aware that the Vietnamese had to fight off the Khmer Rouge, and then later they had to fight the Chinese for territory. So they don't trust the Chinese, they're very careful, and all they wanted to be is independent. This picture here illustrates him in 1978. He stepped on a mine, he lost his hand and his arm, but because he was already a captain, he's been well taken care of.
Yeah.
Even so, this is an example of how we were still able to provide him a wheelchair because that was something the government didn't have.
Absolutely. I think, you know, we saw different extremes. The story we just talked about earlier where it was a lady with her child in a farm, very poor, and probably didn't have anything inside her home. And yet in this case, you know, you can see that it is a little bit more well off and yet still needed to seek a free wheelchair.
So anyway, then we moved to another Vien Din in the morning on the 24th. It was the last day we were there. And this was now we're moving into more children like we did yesterday. What was fascinating here is you look at this picture, you remember it was the boy and with his sister. Tell us a little bit about both of them because that was fascinating.
Well, I was outside making sure that we got more wheelchairs set up for the other region we were going to be sent,
Yes.
even though our team wasn't going. So I didn't get to hear the story inside, and that's why for me every trip sometimes it's heartbreaking because I want to hear every story. I want to be able to be there. But when the team left after getting the interviews, I was able to go inside and just play with the children for a little bit. There was no translator, but these children were severely disabled. I believe it was some kind of waterborne issue. Isn't that right, what they had said to us?
Well, I think, this is one of the things that Agent Orange, has had this immense impact not only on American veterans, but also Vietnamese people in general. And so a lot of these things that we saw, in this case, the boy had muscular dystrophy, and his little sister had Down syndrome. So, we were able to help in some way, but it was fascinating to me to talk with him. And, he was excited he wanted to be I don't know if you remember that, but in our conversation with him, he had this desire to become an IT professional, and he didn't even have a cell phone, much less anything else, but he was still going to school and he was working on it. So this was in the afternoon. This was Thursday. We're now on the last day here. And this is a special picture. Tell us a little bit about this experience with her.
Well, we knew, our partners said that they have a special treat for us, that we were going to meet people that wanted to give us a gift. And so it turned out that these particular individuals actually make these paintings out of rice. And when it's hard to fathom what that looks like, but then when we got there, we could see this particular young lady, she had a sister, they both had brittle bone disease. And so lived in a lot of pain most of the time, but despite that, are able to use their hands to create these art pieces. And so what you see here is one that she had done, and she actually was able to show us how she does it. We had a video of that as well. But we actually were able to bring some home with us, and it was roughly about $15, right? And we used some of those in our office, and as well as at our fundraising event to auction off.
Right. No, it was just amazing. And again, the reason that we're talking about this is that these two girls both had brittle bone disease. While nobody knows the genesis completely, the question of what happened with Agent Orange is still on the minds of many people there. Whether it happened that way or not, it's still a tragedy to see how these people are moving ahead. This picture here actually shows an example of Angela getting the free wheelchair from another young man who was, what was his name?
I don't remember his name. I was saying the logo they had gotten access to. They knew we were coming, so they had ahead of time prepared this, and so that's the Free Wheelchair Mission logo on rice. It's a really beautiful, beautiful piece.
Right, and he had developed this, and he isn't. What he's doing, he's going out to the community, and he's going to these disabled people and teaching them how to do these art with rice. It's just a fascinating example of ingenuity and people who are differently abled. And one of the things that the wheelchairs do for them is that many times they can go out and they can start making a living for their family, when in the past they had to be cared for completely. So let's take a short break and then we'll wrap it up in the next segment. Thank you. So I mean, we've covered most of the bases. Now, do you remember the Thursday night?
Oh yes, I remember it. Our partners tell us dress casual. We're going to be working, and it's true. We worked all week. We sweated a lot, and they said, "Well, bring one nice, dress and attire for gentlemen, because you might have a goodbye dinner." So that I was expecting, but what I was not expecting was that we were going to be going to a gala. So that was a fun, unexpected, and a gala that was going to be broadcast on live TV in Vietnam. That was definitely unexpected.
Right, and so here you have a picture of the host who's inviting people. And what was amazing to me, obviously Free Wheelchair, through the graciousness of a lot of people here in the United States, have contributed a lot of money to this. But they weren't the only ones. I mean, and what you'll see here, this is a picture of only a portion of the people who have donated to this inside of Vietnam. So it isn't only an external thing. It was just fascinating to me to be able to see, how everybody was. How did you feel about getting up there? That must have been kind of interesting.
Well, it was nerve-wracking because I didn't know that that was going to happen.
Right.
And so when they called up there, and then I am used to having Hugh with us who was
Right.
translating, and they said, no, it's just you by yourself. You're going to go up there. So I just kind of followed along. I read the body language and the facial expressions, and I figured, okay, this is where I'm supposed to stand. This is
Right,
where I'm
right.
supposed to. Had I known, I would have probably taken a little more of a formal dress.
Right, right.
But either way, it was definitely one for the memory books to
Right,
be
right.
on live TV.
And it was fun because the traditional formal outfit for Vietnamese is the áo dai for the women, and so everybody was in very elegant áo dais. It was really neat. But you look
Yeah.
beautiful. And so here's a picture of you with Hugh. Look at the smile on his face, right?
That's really neat. The certificate was beautiful.
Right, right. So the next morning, we were given these ceremonial drums, and I got to show this to you. This gentleman was part of the government. He was with us all the time. As you saw, he was the master of ceremonies at the event. What I learned the next day is that while I was in Vietnam, he was in the tunnels of Cu Chi. And, you know, it was funny because he gave us, several of us, one of these drums. And basically, this is a Vietnamese war drum, which was used back in the Emperor Ly days of when they defeated the Ming Dynasty. We're talking about 1400 or so. So it was a real honor for us to get that. And after we had gotten it through a translator, he said, I want to give you a hug. So, I mean, here we were having this opportunity to get a hug, and I was just really, really blown away. And
Yeah, no, it was really special. What you didn't mention is that, you know, we had to be out ready to go at 6:30 in the morning. And so when we were down there, I was told be downstairs at the lobby to leave at 6 in the morning.
Right.
I came down and I was amazed to see everyone that had been with us all week there,
Yeah.
bright smiles,
Yeah.
waiting for us to basically have another little ceremony and
Right.
speeches. And I thought, it's 6 in the morning, but you know, it was so precious too. They treated
Right.
us like family. So
Right.
that was really overwhelming for me because I didn't expect that. I
Yeah.
thought we were just going to the airport,
Right,
you know,
right.
that morning, and they
Right.
brought us those gifts.
Well, that was part of the reason we got you there late, because I think this thing took a little longer than we were expecting.
Yeah.
So there's the final picture of our whole team as we had dinner before we left, and it was an amazing experience. So what I'd like to do is we kind of wrap this up.
Sure.
Angela, what would you? I'm gonna share my classy, but tell us a little bit about how people, if they're touched by this, can get involved. Not necessarily in Vietnam, but anywhere in the world to be able to transform somebody's life.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, you know, a wheelchair, the gift of mobility for us is $80. That covers manufacturing, shipping, and it gets someone the gift. So for us, we're looking for opportunities to come and speak and educate folks and let them know about this need. Not a lot of people realize that in the developing world, some people end up in rooms locked up for years.
Yes,
They just
yeah,
don't
yeah,
ever
yeah.
see the daylight, or they just don't have a wheelchair.
Right, right.
And so for us is just educating people, and we have discovered that when people become aware, they want to do something about
Yeah.
it. They want to get involved. So if you have the ability to make a donation, great. It's $80.
Yeah.
We ship containers,
Right.
550. Every level, every donation is welcome, as well as creating fundraising pages. You know, we have opportunities. People do. I want to be an ambassador. I want to do something for. I have a birthday coming up. In lieu of gifts, I want to ask people to donate a wheelchair instead. So we have what we call tribute gifts, and,
Right.
and people do that all the time for weddings, for birthdays. Sometimes even when someone passes away. We recently had
Right.
the families say, in lieu of flowers, we want to ask people to honor our loved one by donating a wheelchair.
Right.
So there's those ways of giving. And you know, it's 70 million people. 70 million people around the world need a wheelchair. So for us, we're just trying to help one at a time. $80 help someone. So our website, you know, our different ways of giving online. We have the traditional way as well with checks.
Right.
freewheelchairmission.org is where you can learn many ways to get involved with that.
If you want to give, this is my classy site. This video will be on there, so if you want to see it, we'd love to have you. Angela, thank you so much for coming and sharing this story with us, and also sharing all that you've done over the years. You know,
Oh,
you've made a
thank
huge
you.
difference.
I
So,
appreciate it. It was a joy and honor to travel with you.
oh, thank you, thank you very much.